Hello, this video is going to demonstrate how to cut up an old t-shirt so that you get yarn that you can make things with, like these lovely hats. This is a floppy hat with a brim or a beanie type hat. We'll talk more about the hats later. Today we're going to talk about cutting up the t-shirt. First thing you want to do is figure out what type of hem you have. There are basically two different types of hems on t-shirt. This type that has the double stitching, and then there's this type that just has one row of stitching, which you might not be able to see very well because it's trying to be a blind hem. This one has the overt two lines of stitching. So the easiest thing to do is find where this two lines of stitching, I'm going to use the bottom first because it's easier to find that. Find where the two lines of stitching overlap each other. Now I know that this, when it was sewn on the machine, it went through the machine like this. And so the line of stitching that was done last is going in this direction. So I want to pick out some of these stitches in the overlap area, and then I want to start pulling the threads going backwards from the direction that I know the stitching on the machine was used. So I'm going to pull out some of these stitches. This can take you a while depending on how tight the stitches are and how dexterous you feel with the tools. But once you get I definitely don't feel very dexterous today. So I've got one thread going there, and I've got to get one thread going on the other side. And we get a good space there. There we go. Try to get these stitches going here. Come on. It's getting, there we go. There's one. Basically want to pick out somewhere between 15 to 20 stitches to get a really good piece of thread that you can hold on to. And this part is pretty tedious, but if I do it right, the rest of it is not very tedious. Okay, I got a good amount on one side that I can grab onto. I don't have a good amount on this side that I can grab onto. There we go. There's one. Let me get a little bit more on this side. Okay, let's try it. So I go under here and I grab the thread from this side, and if I did it right, it will ravel and pull out the whole hem. And the thread broke, and that happens. So you just go back, get your hold on the two pieces of thread on the outside of the t-shirt, and and get a grab on the inside piece of thread, and it is being a little difficult. Oops. We should have some music playing in the background, but if I did that, I might get in trouble for not using music that I own, and I don't play my own music. So you get to just listen to me talking. Okay, there we go. There we go. That's raveling some there. And I got a good grip. Oh, the thread broke again. So you got the idea that you go all the way around the bottom and get all the thread off there. And then you can lift the hem, and you've got a good amount of t-shirt fabric that was tied up there in the hem. Now for the sleeves, you're going to do pretty much the same thing, but there is no place where the thread overlaps because there's a continuous thread of stitching that goes into the seam here. So for the sleeves, we're going to cut right to the left of the seam, and then we're going to cut to the right of the seam, and we're actually going to cut the whole sleeve out, but I'm not going to bother doing that because I want to show you how. Now the sleeves are actually usually easier than the bottom of the t-shirt, but this is being a little more difficult for me. This must be a pretty old t-shirt that got washed a lot, and it does have a lot of holes in it, so this is a pretty old t-shirt. And it doesn't matter if your t-shirt has stains, holes all over the place, you can still get a good amount of yarn. Now this is being a lot more cooperative than the bottom of the t-shirt was until right there. There we go. So you just keep pulling till you get all the way around, you get all that thread, and you've got the sleeve of the t-shirt now with the hem out. And so what you do from there is you're going to cut the whole sleeve off on each side of the seam. I've got down to the armhole, so I'm going to cut it right around. Right up against the seam. Until you get all the way around. And get the whole sleeve off. Then you're going to cut the rest of the other side of the seam. And you have this little piece that you can throw away. And then I've got a sleeve with the hem removed and totally off of the t-shirt. Now go back to the t-shirt and cut on the shoulder seam that's near the neckband here. We're going to cut on each side of the shoulder seam, on the left and on the right. And you don't have to be incredibly pretty or precise, just as close as you can get to the shoulder seam on both sides. Then you're going to cut all the way around the neckband. And I think you can start seeing that this t-shirt has holes everywhere. That's okay. We're just going to cut around the holes. Sometimes we're going to cut through the holes. Doesn't really matter. And now I'm going down the other side of the shoulder seam. And cut this sleeve out also. And then back here where I cut the sleeve out, I'm going to cut this seam out. You can cut it this way, or you can cut it from the front. I find it easier to cut it with the top facing up. You might find it easier to cut it with the top facing down. But you're going to go all the way around the armhole. And what you will end up with, I already have a t-shirt all cut here. What you will end up, these are the pieces that got cut off. You actually want to hang on to these because you might be able to use the neckband for something, for making decorations on your hat afterwards. But I will end up with 2 sleeves that are totally, all the seams have been cut off. The hem has been taken out. Here's the other sleeve. And then I have a t-shirt. The t-shirt body with my sleeve seams cut off. Now the other situation you have with a hem is this type of hem that has just the 1 row of stitching. This one's a little more difficult to do because the way I do it is I just take the seam ripper and get in under there and carefully rip the seam so that the hem lays open. There might be a way to do the raveling like I did on the other t-shirt, but I haven't figured that one out yet, and this seems to be faster to me. You could just cut this hem off, but there's a lot of fabric in here. There's a good 2 inches on this one, in this hem. So you can go around and trim that off like that, and then cut the sleeves off, cut the neck piece off, and then you still, again, you're back with these 3 pieces of t-shirt. So I can now start cutting. I'm going to put my sleeves to the side, and I'm going to start with my body. So I am going to fold my t-shirt where the side seams normally would be. I'm going to get it nice and flat and fold it not quite halfway. Come here. Lay it out. And I want this folded edge to be about 1 inch in from the other folded side seam edge. And get this nice and straight. Make sure there's no bumpies underneath there. There we go. Nice and flat. This is not getting as flat as I want it to be. There we go. Okay, we'll go this way. This way seems to be cooperating better. All right, now you want your bottom edges to match. So I'm going to match up my bottom edges as precisely as I can in folding the bottom edge. And this is a little difficult because of the crease of where the hem used to be. But if you can get it, and you might want to iron the hem out if you have an iron, but you don't really have to. Let's see how that is all nice and neatly matching. That's good enough. And this is about 1 inch here. And it does not have to be perfect, but you don't really want any little bumpies underneath. Now there's a little bumpy under there. You want it all nice, and the 4 layers of the t-shirt to be nice and flat, and you can kind of feel if there's a little bumpy under there. You want it straight as possible. And the more you fuss with it, the easier it's going to be later. Okay, that's all lined up. I don't feel any more bumpies, lumps underneath there. I think we're all nice and straight. Now, what I'm going to do is get a flat edge. I have a metal ruler. I think this works really well. And I have my rotary cutter and my rotary cutting mat that I'm going to use. If you don't have a rotary cutter and a rotary cutting mat, you can do this just with the scissors, but it will go a whole lot slower. So I'm going to show you how to do it with a rotary cutting mat. I want my slices to be about 3/8 of an inch of width, but I'm not going to measure them. I am not going to be that precise because the stretchiness of the t-shirt really makes it kind of difficult to be that precise. So I am just going to look at it and say, okay, I think that looks like 3/8 of an inch, and I'm going to start cutting. Now I am going to cut along the edge of the ruler up to this folded edge and a tiny bit past. I am not going to cut past this second folded edge. It could be a little difficult for you to get used to doing that, but after you've got the hang of it, it really goes nice and fast. Now now I know I cut through the edge there, so I'm going to stop. I'm going to kind of move this over. After the first cut is usually not incredibly precise. Now this strip is a little skinnier than this strip. That's okay. Doesn't matter. It's all going to be incorporated in what you're making, so it doesn't matter at all. So from here on, you can get pretty accurate. I'm going to just look at this and say that looks like 3/8 of an inch, and I'm cutting right to the edge. Check that I got past that, but I did not slice that second fold. And I'm going to cut there, and I didn't get past the edge, so I'm going to make sure I do that there. And this is where it gets a little tedious and boring, but it's not as boring with the rotary cutter as it is with scissors. Let me do a couple more with the rotary cutter. So that's how nice it looks with rotary cutter. I'll show you how it looks with scissors. Let me get my other scissors over here and see if these will do any better. So you can actually just eyeball it again, and you can see how slow it goes with the scissors, but you can still do it. And I like to hold it like down like this, and that gives me a little tension so that I can get right there, right past. And you got to be careful right here because it's very easy to get too far past that first fold, and you don't want to get more than about 3/4 of an inch before that second fold. So now that I've showed you that the scissors do work if you don't have a rotary mat, since I have a rotary cutter and a mat, I am going to go back to that. So we will just continue doing this. All the way up until we get to the underarm section of the torso. I have found a lot of things on the internet where people are using this method to make all kinds of things. but I like making the hats with it because it's a really nice texture. I'm going to take a check to see where I am. I'm getting close to the armholes here. The armhole is here and it's here. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. And I found out that there are about 2 ways you can get through the armhole area. It kind of depends on where I end up as I get closer to it. Sometimes I'll go ahead and slice off this bottom part of the t-shirt, and sometimes I can continue going up either the front or the back of the t-shirt. If you have printing on both the front and the back of the t-shirt and you're trying to plan where that color is going in your mix of yarn, you might want to try to plot where these cuts go. I'll show you that in a second. Okay, here's the armhole right here. And here's the armhole right here. So I'm getting really close to it. So I don't know what's going to happen here. There we go. There's, that one's getting really close. Here's the armhole. I think I have one more cut, and that's going to get me right next to where that armhole is. Okay, can you see the slice right here is right next to the armhole? So I'm going to go ahead and continue that slice right into the armhole. So that gets the front of the t-shirt over here and the back of the t-shirt and a small amount right here in between the two. And then all these slices that you just did. So I want to take a look at what we've got here. Now what I'm going to do here is, see, I've got my pieces that I sliced, and then I've got the section. This is where the armhole, the bottom of the armhole is, and then this is where it continues on to this is the back section of the t-shirt. I'm going to take my scissors. This is really, really important. What I want is as continuous a piece of yarn as I can have. If you don't have that continuous, there are things you can do about it, but the more continuous a piece of yarn I can create, the easier I can find something large that I want to make out of it. So what I want to do is take this last cut, and I'm going to angle this down to the second cut. I'm going to angle this right there. Now see how that created a strip going from where I did my layers and layers of cutting to the back piece of the t-shirt and the front piece of the t-shirt. So here I'm going to take this strip and go back to where my slices are and open up this side, and I'm going to do that again all the way down this rib piece that I did not cut. So I'm going to take this, see, this is the piece I've got here. So I'm going to take my scissors and very carefully cutting the 3/8 from this side to the other side of the strip. And now I'm going to continue that all the way down this side that I did not cut. And that's going to create this really long strip of t-shirt that I will become your yarn. Your strip. Can you see how this is getting really continuous and cool? I'm going to continue my strips. And this takes a little bit of time, and you can see that this one right here is a little thicker than some of the others. Again, that is fine. You want to be as consistent as possible. All right, now when you get down to the end, the last slice you do is going to angle off to the end of the hem of the t-shirt. Now here's the area that was in the hem of the t-shirt. Remember, I told you that you could just cut off the hem area of the t-shirt, but from here on, this is all what was in the hem of the t-shirt. So look at all this yarn I'm getting by taking the time to pick out the stitches. All right, here's my last cut. I have my two pieces here and one piece here. So I am going to cut the 3/8 of an inch until I just get to the bottom of the t-shirt. And there is my end. So I'm going to take my end and start giving a little bit of tension. Can you see how it rolls and creates that wonderful piece of yarn that's got this wonderful elasticity to it? So there you go. Now where did I put, hang on a second. Now, there we go. So this is a piece of cut cardboard from a roll of wrapping paper, and just slice a slice in it, and I'm going to put the end of the t-shirt on that and start wrapping it around. Now while I'm wrapping it, I'm giving a little bit of tension so it rolls. You see how I've got, here's it not rolling. I'm going to give a little bit of tension as I roll it onto the cardboard so that it forms that wonderful look. I'm going to do some on this side, and then I'm going to turn it and roll some down on this side. Again, I'm just giving a little bit of tension here to roll it on. And I'm going to roll up what I've gotten cut here. And soon you'll start seeing the colored area. We're still on just the bottom of the t-shirt that had no color printing on it. And I'm going to roll again. You see how that looks wonderfully nice and rolled, creating that yarn. And again, it's going to form that wonderful random pieces of color. And I'm getting really close to where, here we go. All right, now here's the piece that goes to the back of the t-shirt. Now I'm going to get rid of some of my fuzzies so they are out of the way. Oops. Okay. So we've got our body of the t-shirt all cut up and wound onto our cardboard. And this is the back of the t-shirt, and this is the front of the t-shirt. Now, sometimes when I do the body of the t-shirt, these end up being two totally separate pieces, and the underarm areas kind of line up as I was doing the strips. This ended up so that I have a little piece here. So I have to think, where do I want this design, this black of the front of the t-shirt in my mix of where the color is created in here? And I think I want to cut up the back of the t-shirt first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my rotary cutter. Again, you can use your scissors, but since I have the rotary cutter in the mat, I'm going to do my rotary cutter. I'm going to start with my thread, thread over here, and I'm going to cut. Again, I'm just eyeballing it, 3/8 of an inch across the bottom of the top of the back of the t-shirt where I had made my last cut. I'm going to go over here, over to here, and cut right through. That's not what I wanted to do. That's not what I wanted to do.
I can't reverse that one.
Okay, I'm going to change my mind. Okay, since we changed our mind here, we are going to continue onto the front of the t-shirt and go right through the design, through the front of the t-shirt, and I'm going to stop right before I get to the edge. And I'm going to turn, I'm going to put my back of the t-shirt away. I'm going to turn to the armhole area of the t-shirt and continue with my 3/8 of an inch, just eyeballing it again, to the shoulder seam. I'm going to turn it again, and I'm going to continue cutting around. Now, this will create some little peaks here, and you can see this is totally not accurate. This is skinnier, then this is fatter. It's not going to matter. If you really want to cut these little peaks off that I created right there, and here's a more drastic one that I created down here on the side right before I went up the armhole, you can cut these off. I like to leave them on because they add a little texture to the finished product that I kind of like. So I'm going to leave them on to the edge, but not through. And this one's a little long, so I'm going to cut a little bit off. And I'm going to go back across the front of the t-shirt, right through the design of what was printed on the t-shirt to the edge. And back up this side of the armhole. Back around. Okay, I'm getting really close to the end of where I can get cutting done. I'm going to get one more strip through here. And get a little bit of t-shirt there and a little bit here. That's pretty good. All right. Now we're going to roll this up like we did before. So I came to where we have just an edge. So now I'm going to either turn to the piece I have of the back of the t-shirt or one of the sleeves. So since we did the front of the t-shirt, the back of the t-shirt is pretty much the same thing. This sleeve is pretty much the same thing. Let me show you one sleeve here. So I'm going to start on the bottom edge of the sleeve. And again, try to eyeball it to be 3/4 of an inch. And I'm going to do the same exact thing I did on the top of the front of the t-shirt. I'm going to go around the corners. I'm going to just leave the corners there and try to be as accurate as I can going around the outside of the t-shirt until I get down to a place where I can't go anymore. And then I will have another edge that I can join to the edge of my piece that stopped at the front of the t-shirt. Okay, so I've got the whole sleeve cut up, and I've got to combine this with this. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take it over to the, you can sew this by hand. You can glue it, I guess, if you wanted to. I prefer to go over to the sewing machine and use a zigzag stitch and zigzag stitch this together, and then you've got more of a continuous piece of yarn. So the way I like to connect the ends is to lay one end over the other about 1 inch to 1.5 inches, and then zigzag it together. So I put it under my foot and get it right down where it's maybe 1 or 2 stitches past where the under piece is. And I'm just going to very carefully zigzag to a stitch or 2 past where the top piece is laying, and then take that off, cut the threads, and that makes a very secure joining. And when it's knit into what you're making, it doesn't show at all. So there you go. And you can make all these wonderful hats. Here's a hat, and here's a hat. Whoops. So all these floppy hats and the beanie hat, I'm going to have a pattern. The patterns with links for the patterns on this video. And so that's how you cut up a t-shirt.